Sundays. Sunday nights, even. I hope everyone's mellow. We're all vibing, and I just want to state I have no problem being wrong. As a matter of fact, I've been wrong so many times in the past. I mean, does anyone remember the Farina is Istaroth theory? A classic. And I think an important part of coming up with a theory is being able to cross-examine and point out any and all fallacies regarding the theory. And that's what we're going to do today with regards to the bastard crackhead Dragon King in Nibelung was the second descender who introduced Teyvats to forbidden knowledge by leaving this world and coming back with it. However, while reviewing this theory, I came across some telling pieces of evidence that may even suggest the Primordial One doesn't hail from beyond the stars. You didn't even see the music, did you? Because I'm scared, man. And I don't know if we'll ever hear the music again. In the Hyperborea era, there was the original Great War between the Sovereigns and the Primordial One, a progenitor god hailing from beyond the stars. It is the only one who can hold a candle to an eon, and its name is the Primordial One, a progenitor god hailing from beyond the stars. Who among the people we've met so far could be a god? But not just any god, an eldritch, Lovecraftian, enigmatic entity similar in nature to that of an all too familiar god in a sister game. So as to challenge once more the Primordial One, the lost. Imagine if instead of Firefly this was Yoimiya, or instead of Robin this was Fischl. But my friends, you need not worry, because that's all you can do is imagine it. Because in the world established by the Primordial One, none of these things will ever come to fruition. Only good arises from the worlds it created. The bad guy dies, the good guy lives. And in the end, we all come out on the other side happier because of it. Thank you, the Primordial One, a progenitor god hailing from beyond the stars. Thank you, Fanes. Alright, I mean, that premise is, it's simple enough. I'm just gonna go over it now because I know someone is going to inevitably bring it up, and it's in my opinion the weakest argument against this theory, and it's Neuvillette's story on Visions, which apparently states, without a doubt, that the Winged One worked with the second Descender to create the Gnosis with the remains of the third, except this statement cannot be said without a doubt because there is indeed an incredible amount of doubts. The paragraph writes, quote, severely wounded in the Great War of Vengeance, the usurper had their functions ruined and could no longer use their absolute authority to suppress the original order of this world. To continue to subdue and control the resentments and loathing of the world, the usurper and one who came after created the Gnosis together. In Chinese, the paragraph is better translated as, quote, suffering heavy losses in the revenge war, the usurper's functions were damaged and was no longer able to rely on its absolute authority to suppress the original order of this world. In order to suppress and subdue the unwillingness and resentment of the world, the usurper and another latecomer created the heart of God together. Nowhere in any of these statements can we say the text is for sure referring to the second who came as the one Fanes worked with to create the Gnosis. Both texts simply states either one who came after or another latecomer, indicating it could be either the second or the third descender. The reason I'm not a fan of the Nibelung being the third descender idea is because the Gnosis are exceedingly elementally compatible. Keep this in mind, we got this information from a sovereign who gave us no indication that this level of compatibility could be found in any other dragon.
That means that the Gnosis, which are exceedingly element compatible and can even enhance elemental abilities, do indeed come from the third descender. I wonder, does your body also possess similar properties?
Now, with that said, there is something to keep in mind, and if Nibelung did indeed warp himself to become a descender, it could be possible he also somehow became more elementally compatible. But if Nibelung was in fact the third descender, then who's the second who came who fought against the heavenly principles if not Nibelung? Before Sun and Moon tells us, quote, the second throne of the heavens came and war was rekindled as it was in the world's creation. That day the heavens collapsed and the earth was rent asunder. Our ancestors in their ancestral land fell into this place during that conflict. And then finishes his thought by writing, quote, but the Primordial One, the first throne, had laid down a ban, preventing our ancestors from finding the path home. In that case, the Primordial One must have defeated the second who came. So barring the author was blatantly mistaken to the point the entire book's legitimacy needs to be called into question, then the Primordial One did indeed square off with the second who came. But if that's the case, and Nibelung had no connection to this war, then does that simply mean that there were 3 major wars in Teyvat's history that happened after the war with the Sovereigns, but before the Divine Nails all fell? There's the war Nabu Malikata saw, the war versus the second who came, who we'd currently have no indicators as to their true identity nor why they'd want a war. Then the war versus the third Descender as Nibelung, with which the mysterious second Descender also decided to help for some reason after losing the prior war. For those reasoning, maybe Nibelung didn't actually engage in a war, but was simply killed by the first and second Descenders before anything could have happened. Apep confirmed there was a war after Nibelung acquired forbidden knowledge.
The Dragon King acquired the power of darkness from outside of this world, and led us in a fight against the order established by the Outsiders. An unimaginable war took place in Teyvat, causing destruction on an unprecedented scale. The world itself was on the verge of collapse.
It's due to this convoluted timeline that I suggest Nibelung was indeed a Descender or heavily related with the second Descender. That way we'd have a potential identity for the second who came who fought the Heavenly Principles, we'd know why they wanted war versus the Heavenly Principles, and we'd know why it was called a Great War of Vengeance by Neuvillettes. To the point of the third Descender, I believe that to be someone we don't know about yet, who sacrificed himself for reasons not yet known to help the Heavenly Principles. Good guy they were. Now, to be fair to the earlier argument, I just stated I didn't like it because it raises too many questions about the second Descender, whilst promoting my own line of thinking, which raises too many questions about the third Descender. Although that's not the only reason I find it problematic. I do think that's hilarious. Regardless, both theories hinge on the idea that Nibelung was a Descender despite being a native from Teyvat, and the way he became a Descender was by leaving the world to acquire forbidden knowledge and re-entering with a will strong enough to rival the world. Now, this to me is one of the biggest points of problems regarding this theory, but not for the reason you might think. To most, the idea that Nibelung could be a Descender is asinine, given he's a native of Teyvat. However, ruling him out on this basis alone seems as trivial as counting all beings who come from beyond as Descenders when we know for a fact this isn't true. Renee's notes give us an important clarification on Descenders, writing, quote, "This too is my goal, for not all that comes from beyond may be as one that descends. That title belongs only to wills that can rival an entire world. That is what I seek, the way to become just such a will. One that can protect the world, sustain the world, destroy the world, and create the world." Given Renee specifically tried to become a Descender and likely would have succeeded were it not for the Traveler, then it seems plausible that those from Teyvat can indeed become a Descender should they acquire that will. Renee says that title of descends belongs only to those whose will is strong enough to rival the world, and says nothing about it with regards to the recipient's relation to Teyvat. There are beings who came from beyond but lack the will, so they aren't given the title of descends, like the Narwhal, our sibling. So why can't there then be beings from within who do acquire the will, like Nibelung, who managed to acquire the entirety of the power of darkness? Surely that's enough to give someone the will to rival the world. This part seems sane to me. The part of the theory that bugs me a little is how Apep phrases how Nibelung acquired the crack for dragons.
The Dragon King acquired the power of darkness from outside of this world.
Acquired the power of darkness from outside this world. My problem is, this doesn't really imply that Nibelung actually left the world. It simply states he acquired the power of darkness from beyond this world, which suggests either or. I've been spewing for months that Nibelung left this world and came back with forbidden knowledge. Following the original war, things were going swimmingly for a time until that bastard crackhead Dragon King Nibelung came back to Teyvat with the good old forbidden knowledge, also known as crack for the dragons. He tried to run it back with the Heavenly Principles, fucking died, and that was that. When that's not really consistent with what we know, so let's look at the flip side. Does the theory fall apart if Nibelung never actually left the world? Well, first things first, what is a Descender? Let's ask Nahida.
A very important part of the intel was about this world's Descenders. External beings, ones that don't belong to this world. Traveler, you are Teyvat's fourth Descender.
Nahida states that Descenders are those that, quote, don't belong to this world, and leaves it at that, never minding how they actually came into this world in the first place, or what doesn't belong to this world means. We know in the Traveler and their siblings case, they crash-landed or summoned here, some fucking shit like that, bro. So clearly they came from beyond the stars, but herein lies the problem. They're the only descender we can verifiably say came from beyond the stars. With regards to the first and second descender, all before Sun and Moon tells us is, quote, when the eternal throne of the heavens came, the world was made anew. Then the true Lord, the Primordial One, came forth and did battle against the 7 terrifying sovereigns, dragon lords of the old world. The book gives us further info regarding our favorite winged one's origin, stating, quote, the Primordial One may have been Fanes. It had wings and a crown, and was birthed from an egg androgynous in nature, but for the world to be created, the eggshell had to be broken. However, Fanes, the Primordial One, used the eggshell to separate the universe and the microcosm of the world. We don't know where this egg was in relation to Earth, but given the text speaks of the creation of Earth following the egg being broken, it seems to suggest the egg was independent of the Earth, but this seems more myth than reality when, I mean, we know the fucking Earth and the Sovereigns were here before the arrival of Fanes. What's even more troubling is the seeming separation of the eternal throne of the heavens and Fanes, but given the text later does this with the second throne of the heavens before referring to it as the second who came, I'm not gonna think much of it. The only statement we have regarding Fanes actually hailing from beyond is what Apep says.
Yes. There's no denying that. Although my hatred for that usurper from beyond the heavens still stirs deep within me.
And even she doesn't state from beyond the stars, but rather from beyond the heavens. This is in stark contrast to how Neuvillette describes the Traveler.
Since you hail from beyond the stars, I invite you to be my witness as I judge this upended world.
However, given heavens and skies seem to be used interchangeably in Teyvat,
Wait, you are familiar. You're the voice we heard from the sky in Sumeru.
The voice from the sky, I fear that description is wrong. Though, not completely wrong.
then I think despite all the doubts I may have just sowed, we can safely sit here, stand proud, and say it is indeed the Primordial One, a progenitor god, hailing from beyond the stars. However, to the point of the second who came, the text just writes, quote, the second throne of the heavens came and war was rekindled as it was in the world's creation. We don't know where it came from. That is unless we turn to Nabu Malikata, who states, quote, but in time invaders descended from beyond the firmaments, bringing with them destruction, overturning rivers, spreading plagues. Now, given this occurred at around the same time as the fall of the Zili race, it makes it very likely that what she saw was indeed the arrival of the second who came. The war she describes was destruction, overturning rivers, and spreading plagues. Just making sure you weren't deaf. And she further goes on to describe the use of forbidden knowledge in the war by stating, quotes, and though the invaders brought war to my former kin, they also brought about illusions that could break through the shackles to the land. Both a war of this magnitude and the use of forbidden knowledge was how Apep described Nibelung's war.
The Dragon King acquired the power of darkness from outside of this world, and led us in a fight against the order established by the outsiders. An unimaginable war took place in Teyvat, causing destruction on an unprecedented scale. The world itself was on the verge of collapse.
That's not all. The war with the second who came was described by Eboshi as a war in which the heavens capsized and the earth was ripped asunder. Exactly how it's described in Before Sun and Moon. Quote, that day the heavens collapsed and the earth was rent asunder. And once again, these descriptions are all very similar to how Apep described Nibelung's war.
The world itself was on the verge of collapse.
Let me ask you guys, given we know these crackheads tried to gangbang Fanes and severely wounded him in the Great War of Vengeance, wouldn't it make sense that it happened when the heavens were under great attack as they seemingly were in the war with the second who came? I mean, heavens being capsized, heavens collapsing. This is prime time, baby! And if we accept this to be true, and you accept that the Great War of Vengeance was indeed caused by Nibelung because it was a great war of vengeance, then this line of reasoning makes it very likely Nibelung had some affiliation with the second Descender, if he wasn't the second Descender. The final thing that suggests all these wars were in actuality just one war from a bunch of different perspectives is their relation to the nails. Following the war Malikata witnessed, the nails came down. Following the war with the second who came, the nails came down. And following Nibelung's war, once again, the nails came down.
But I didn't give up on searching for a way to turn the tides, even after the death of the Dragon King. As I attempted to collect more forbidden knowledge from the corners of the world, as it was on the verge of collapse, I was stopped by the giant spike that fell from the sky.
This is why I believe it to be highly likely that Nibelung's war, the war with the second who came, and Malikata's war were all the same, because so far as we know, the nails came down all at once, except for maybe the Conrian one. Given their whole purpose was to heal the world, you either need to reconcile that there were 3 separate world-ending wars that each saw their own unique set of nails, in which case we are missing a whole lot of fucking nails, or they were all the same war and the nails simply came down after it. Now with that said, I do want to point out regarding Malikata's version of events, could it be what she witnessed wasn't the second who came, but rather the denizens of the dark arriving unto this world after Nibelung acquired the power of darkness? I ask this because she stated, invaders, when by all accounts, if Nibelung did leave this world, he should have left by himself. I mean, Apep didn't mention he left with anyone. So who could he have came back with? Well, yes, the answer could be, it's those denizens of the dark. There's one thing really throwing me off regarding this whole thing, and it's honestly the reason I made this video, and it's how Neuvillette views the Dragon King. Quote, he would never admit that he himself had become quite fascinated with the joys and sorrows of humanity. Was it not so, he would argue, that humans find their gaze stolen by the ripples from falling raindrops and puddles? And could it not be, he would explain, that King Nibelung had been wrong, and that the Black Void could only be opposed if all life were to band together as one? What? Why would Nibelung want to oppose the Black Void if he was the one that brought it over? Unless, of course, what happened to Apep happened to him, and by that I mean he originally acquired the power of darkness thinking he could control it, trying to overthrow the heavenly principles, but soon it was too much. He became consumed by the forbidden knowledge and horrified by the power he unleashed unto Teyvats, tried to fight it back, but for some reason thought only the bishops were capable of this. However, this would go against everything Apep said.
The Dragon King acquired the power of darkness from outside of this world, and led us in a fight against the order established by the outsiders.
He used it to fight the heavenly principles, so what's the deal here? At what point could he have wanted to oppose the Black Void between when he brought it over to Teyvat, led the sovereigns in a war with it, and died with it sprinkled all over his body? I mean, is this one of, his reincarnations Neuvillette is speaking about, or what? That's even assuming that Nibelung is a sovereign and can be reincarnated. However, what I find very interesting about Nibelung introducing the power of darkness to Teyvats, realizing it was a mistake and then trying to fight it, is you could call this a sin. And it just so happens there's a certain self-proclaimed sinner who's the embodiment of the power of darkness.
Oh, dear creature, why do you bow down? For I am no god. I am but a sinner.